Brandt DXT grain carts have efficient unload speeds, large carrying capacities, unmatched durability, and reliable components that make sure your cart is working when you are. Lead the field with DXT grain carts from Brandt. Visit your local Brandt dealer for more information.
It's time for RealAg Radio on Rural Radio Channel 147 on Sirius XM. RealAg Radio and RealAgriculture.com is your home for insight and analysis of the issues that are impacting your farm business. Let's get real and get connected with RealAg Radio. Welcome to RealAg Radio here on Rural Radio 147, Sirius XM. Shaun Haney, your host here on this Tuesday edition of the show. It is great to be back. Oh, it was great to take a vacation for a week, but I'll tell you what, I missed y'all. I missed you. Yes, I missed doing this show. And it is great to be with everybody here today. And listen, today presents an avalanche of news and things that are happening. We got a USDA report. Maybe the biggest market mover report of the year. We'll talk to Jim McCormick from agmarket.net today about that. We've also got Kyle Larkin, Executive Director of the Grain Growers of Canada. He's on the road. He's doing a Prairie MP tour, checking out crops, visiting with MPs, visiting farms. We'll find out about that with Kyle. I'm also going to ask him about the announcement today that China is going to be applying a 75% tariff on Canadian canola seed. This is anti-dumping tariffs. They're putting in their preliminary, I guess, investigation, or this is all stemming back to those EV tariffs that Canada put on China. So there's a bit of a chain reaction that's happening here. Now we have tariffs on oil, meal, and canola seed. Okay, so there's lots happening on that front. I've got an update. The new results from the Canadian Farmer Sentiment Index. So what you, the audience, have said in terms of your financial outlook, willingness to invest capital, direction of the markets, mental health, we'll run through that here today as well. And we're going to be talking to Lyle Cowell, who's with Nutrien. And today's show is, of course, brought to you by Nutrien. Yes, Nutrien eKonomics. Now, from nutrient management to the latest weather, market, and ag trends, The Dirt, an eKonomics podcast, is your place for farm smart topics to boost your profitability. Join Mike Howell on season 4 of The Dirt podcast, available now at Nutrien-economics with a K.com. That's Nutrien-economics.com. That economics is with a K. Don't forget about that, everybody. And check out the website. There's a lot of information there that is not about product at all. Now, Nutrien's got a lot of products, but it's not about product. It's about good agronomy. Okay, I was going to say maybe not good, great agronomy. A lot of information there for sure. So today's show is brought to you by Nutrien eKonomics. Okay, yeah. Now, your feedback. This is the critical part. All you got to do is send me an email, shaney@realagriculture.com. You can also call the RealAg feedback line, 855-776-6147. And of course, you can find Real Agriculture across all of the social media platforms. And make sure that you are getting our emails that go out on a daily basis, that you can find out more and subscribe to the free newsletters by going to realagriculture.com/subscribe. Well, I mentioned the canola issue with China. That's a big one. That is a big one. Okay. We've also got AEM numbers out today. We've also got the EPA making some changes to how you need to be using, for example, DEF, which is very fascinating. So the EPA says it will require engine manufacturers to reduce derating when diesel exhaust fluid runs out through the DEF requirement, although the DEF requirement remains. So under the current rules, commercial diesel engines such as in tractors require a selective catalytic reduction exhaust system using DEF. You know about this, DEF. And this is, by the way, this is going to be a decision that is extremely popular with farmers. So when an engine sensor alerts that the engine is low or runs out of DEF, the engine is automatically derated, losing power until the sensor is cleared or the DEF is refilled. So this automatic engine derating has been an irritant for farmers and other users of commercial diesel engines like truckers, as derating can leave operators stranded mid-job. Like, is there anything more frustrating where you're trying to get the crop in the ground and all of a sudden you got a DEF light coming on and you're powering down? DEF, when used in a selective catalytic reduction exhaust system, reduces nitrous oxide emissions from diesel, turning the potent greenhouse gas into water and nitrogen. DEF's addition has been a requirement under the EPA since 2010. However, starting with the new model year, 2027, EPA requirements state that all new diesel on-road trucks must be engineered to avoid sudden and severe power loss and running out of DEF. So there is more on this story at RealAgriculture.com. We'll see if there's some ripple effects when it comes to other countries like Canada and others. But I would think there's going to be a lot of celebrating in farm country about this decision from EPA. And hey, the revised DEF guidance is going to save family farmers an estimated $727 million per year. That's not small potatoes whatsoever. Okay, we got more coming up here on RealAg Radio. Today's show, of course, is brought to you by Nutrien eKonomics, and we'll be right back. We're talking USDA report right after this.
Kosher sucks.
Big time. And hate it. Really gets in the way.
Awful. But not anymore. Get a head start on tough-to-kill weeds like kochia this fall with Volterra EZ and Fierce EZ Soil Active Herbicide. Apply after harvest before freeze-up for up to 8 weeks of extended control in pulses, soybeans, and wheat next spring. Volterra EZ, Fierce EZ for kochia. Visit newfarm.ca/kochia.
If you're involved in the agriculture industry, it's important to stay informed on all the latest issues affecting your business. At RealAgriculture.com, we offer fast, reliable news, information, and insights to help you keep on top of all of the latest in Canadian agriculture. Visit RealAgriculture.com and sign up for our free daily newsletter covering everything from news, agronomy, animal agriculture, and much more. Visit RealAgriculture.com/subscribe today.
The new Brandt XT grain cart delivers unmatched forward auger reach, side auger reach, and discharge spout clearance for easy positioning, with sight lines that allow you to actually see what you're doing while you're doing it, saving you time with each load and getting you back to the combine sooner. They say hindsight is 20/20. We say seeing what's in front of you is better. Lead the field with the new XT grain cart from Brandt.
Well, I've been saying here all day, what a Tuesday. This is a Tuesday loaded with news, loaded with information, and we're trying to provide as much of a breakdown as we possibly can. Let's talk about the WASDE report that really blew the doors off some of the expectations. The expectation on corn, 188 and change, which is like 9.5 bushels per acre over the prior record. I think we're going to hear more about this. Jim McCormick, agmarket.net, joins us. Hey, Jim, how are we doing?
I'm doing well. Thank you, Shaun. Man, you're right. The August WASDE number sometimes can definitely give us some excitement. This has got to be, in my 30 years, one of the more surprising ones. I mean, the acreage was a blowout number that we were not expecting. You throw in this record yield by a lot. Like I said, it was a huge market, definitely stunned by the number, I would say, at least in the corn side of the equation.
Wow. It's okay. So like you said, it's not just the yield forecast of 188.8. It's also the acre number. And in combination, we have got a lot of corn to potentially deal with.
Immense amount of corn. So what you're looking at, like I said, you're getting that revision up in the acres and the yield. The net effect, plain and simple, is we found about 1 billion bushels of corn compared to July. That is a billion with a B. Yes, that is essentially what that number is suggesting right here. So your harvested acres are up 1.9 million. Your planted acres 2.1. You don't harvest everything you plant, but when you combine it all, essentially your production is up 1,037 million to 16,742. But then you got to take the carry-in number, Shaun. They did make slight adjustments to the old crop carry-in, but the carry-in number, 1.3 billion. So the fact of the matter is right now in the United States, there's total supply hitting the market between production and carry-in a little over 18 billion bushels of corn. Just a massive amounts of corn, to be quite honest.
Yeah. So at the time of us doing this interview, we got corn down 15, soybeans up 11. Are you a little bit surprised corn's not down more?
I am a little bit surprised corn is not down more. I mean, like I said, that number is a shocking number. I do think some buyers that are trying to buy it near the low, arguing, hey, we're an hour into the report and we're not accelerating lower, so maybe you're trying to get some bottom pickers. The other thing I think probably helping the corn market out is we haven't talked about beans. The bean situation. We gained a bunch of corn acres. We lost bean acres. They did raise the bean yield a little bit, but the net effect of the bean carryout actually dropped 20 million from the July. So the bean market's trading a little bit higher. Maybe that's spilling into the corn. Now, I know, Shaun, there's a lot of people hoping that, hey, we got a bearish report, threw everything but the kitchen sink at it. Is this big number going to price it in? I'm a little bit suspect of it because here's the problem. Unfortunately, we never had a summer rally for the corn crop where the farmer gets a lot of the grain sold. The best estimates I've heard is we've had less than 5% of this corn crop's been priced. So if you think about the size of this crop, essentially 18 billion bushel supply, maybe a billion bushel price at best, you're going to have 16, 17 billion bushels of corn on price. What are you going to do with all that corn? We can't store it all on farm. It is going to have to come into the system. When it comes into the system, it's going to be sold, and you're going to get that hedge pressure pushing the market down potentially. Like I said, this number, I think, could shrink, but the question is, do we just get drug lower into the fall harvest as essentially, like I said, the farmer gets forced to essentially move grain at the market simply because the lack of storage on farm?
Jim, historically, how accurate is this report?
Well, historically, it is a moving target. I mean, it would not be surprised. Look at last year. The crop got bigger in August, bigger in September, bigger in October, lowered in November, then they cut it back. Because remember, this is a shot of what the trade thinks and what the government thinks as of beginning of August. Also remember, Shaun, this is I call it more of a mathematical number. And what I mean by that is derived by farmer surveys, it's derived by satellite imagery, and it's derived by crop ratings. They have not been boots on the field yet. We've got a lot of disease in the United States. We've had some pollination issues. We've got corn denting in parts of the Midwest that it shouldn't be denting right now. So there is an argument that, there's problems with this crop that you cannot see from the road. Same thing with beans. We got some dry weather coming in parts of the Midwest. Is that going to abort some pods? So this number will flex, I believe, as we go through the fall. And it wouldn't shock me if we do lose some corn bushels. The problem is when you're starting with an 18 billion bushel supply on August 12th, I should say, let's say you lose 500 million bushels. Who cares? There's too much corn available at the moment. And then on top of it, you still have a very big Brazilian crop that's underpriced as well. So, that's the issue we got. So this crop will move. Now, the thing I will say that probably the adjustment in the acres that was done now was a very hard adjustment on the acres. I would guess that means when we do get further revisions in September and October, they're not going to be near as dramatic as we saw today. So the acreage number should quit flexing quite as hard as it did today. Yeah,
there's more opportunity for flex in that or reduction in that 188 number than there is in the acreage number. You would think. You mentioned storage, and that it's not like in Montana or Western Canada where people have enough storage to store maybe a couple years of crop. In the Midwest, it's different than that. I also wonder about impacts on basis levels as well. What do you think there?
It's going to be weak. I mean, the problem is, when you get, like I said, the total supply there, the farmer can only store so much. Then it gets forced to put the elevators. But when you're talking this big of a crop, even the elevators are going to have a hard time trying to put it all away. So what traditionally happens is that basis just drops to the point where essentially instead of them buying the grain from you, they're essentially going to quote unquote take it off your hands. Right. And depending on where you are in certain parts of where this crop actually, if it does manifest as big as the government just said today, it's probably going to put downward pressure on the corn basis. Bean basis, being the crop is a little bit smaller than anticipated, that may keep it from getting quite as ugly in the beans at least. But but the other wild card in the beans is President Trump just signed the extension of the trade deal with China for 90 days. We are in a window where China traditionally starts buying a lot of beans. If they don't start stepping up and buying beans, in essence, and trying to ship that off the P&W, now you got a problem of storage of the beans, because normally it's harvest them and move them to the Chinese. If the Chinese aren't buying them this fall, now we got to figure out what are we going to do with those beans. And if you're not moving the beans, you know how it is. Very few people want to pile beans outside, so the beans will be inside, and that might force even more corn potentially to be piled outside, which usually, unfortunately, means even worse spaces.
Yeah, great segue. I was just going to say, let's zoom out. And boy, does this ever put immense pressure on the Trump trade agenda at a time where we've got this much crop out there. There was the True Social post early Monday or late Sunday night about 3 times or 4 times the amount of soybean purchases by China. They're going to need some trade deals, and fast, dealing with this much of a supply potentially.
Exactly. I mean, because like I said, the problem you've got if you think of how we market grain in the U.S., we ship beans in the fall. This is when beans, because that's traditionally, we do move some corn, but beans does the heavy lifting as we try to get in front of the Brazilian harvest at the beginning of, Jan, Feb, March. So, the problem we've got here, if you're an American producer, is we've kicked the can down another 90 days, which puts that trade in, that deal with the, essentially the deadline closer to the APEC summit, which means it may, and Trump wants to meet with Xi personally. So if they meet around the APEC summit, that's going to be October 31st, November 1. If we can't get an agreement for China to buy beans before then, they sign that bean deal on November 1, we've already missed our window to ship beans. It's a huge potential problem. So yes, and then that moves into 2025. Right now, this is a monster crop, a big carry-in. I would argue right now, Shaun, as we go into 2026, we are not going to plant anywhere near these amount of acres in 2026. We're going to fall below 90 million acres, okay? Because the lack of profitability and the cost of fertilizer. So if you can't plant corn, you're going to go to beans. And by God, we're going to have a huge problem if we're not selling beans to the Chinese and people end up planting more beans because it's the cheaper crop to plant. I'm going to lose less money with beans than corn potentially. We could have a huge bean problem. In the same situation with the beans, a year from now, we have in corn is just an abundant supply. So yes, I would argue the Trump administration is under a lot of pressure, I think, by the farm groups to get this trade deal done and get the Chinese to commit to buy beans sooner than later. My fear is I think that's what the Chinese know, and they want to keep that in the back pocket, and they're not going to commit to buying U.S. beans until they get the deal they want.
What did the numbers say about wheat?
In general, the wheat number was relatively muted. There wasn't really anything shocking. The world wheat carryout number, they dropped from 261.5 down to 260.1, down a shade from 261.9 was the average guess. Last year was 262.7. So I would argue a little bit friendly on that number, but in general, they're being pulled down by the corn. They're just struggling right now. I think the wheat market may have more of an impact on what the U.S. dollar does based on our CPI inflation readings and with the Fed cuts rates. Remember, as well, these the war negotiations go between Trump and Putin here at the end of the week.
Yeah. For a farmer, obviously inventory on the field, potentially inventory on farm. What's your recommendation here from a hedging and risk management standpoint? Sell the rallies. That's one thing I've heard from a number of people via text. What are some thoughts?
Right now, especially on the corn, I think you've got to essentially your job one right now is figure out what you think your crop size is, and what you can store on farm, and what you can't store on farm. You need to concentrate on the bushels you cannot store, be it corn, be it spring wheat if you're harvesting the spring wheat right now, or be it the beans. Storage is going to be an immense problem for a lot of people. And if you're going to run out of storage, you don't want to be the last guy to deliver to the elevator because you're probably going to get the worst spaces. So those are the bushels that I think you're going to have to try to defend quick and maybe market. And then, but in the long run, like I said, I think you do want to re-own the corn in the long run. The demand for new corn demand overall has been very, very good. We're going to lose a lot of corn acres in 2026. So I think that will bring us some value to corn eventually. But right now, we got to figure out what we're going to do with this crop. Same thing with the beans. The beans are a little bit more tough. The supply is a little bit tighter right now than what we thought it was going to be, which is good. But we're really basing on what kind of deal President Trump can make with the Chinese. But I think the pressure is going to be on for him to cut the deal. And if he does cut the deal, that should be friendly beans. So our argument is to move the grain, you got to move, but you want to maintain as much ownership as you can. And the grain you do have to sell, you might consider trying to re-own on paper per se.
What a success of genetics. Right? Like it shows you when weather cooperates and the where we are with genetics and traits right now, this is where it equals yield. I'm also going to get it in the bin. We're not out of the wind yet, but boy, this like I remember going back about a month ago, Jim, where I was hearing from some people like even to put a 185 on the board, things have to line up, and now we're at 188. It's just incredible.
There was a couple surveys and announcements came out a couple weeks ago when the first pricing yield models came out, and they were at that 188, 189. And yes, a lot of people are like, there's no way. This is what's amazing. It was like, there's no way we can have that good a yield based on the corn acres. And then on top of it, they came on that yield and then they threw, another couple, almost 2 million acres of corn on top of it. It is very hard to comprehend that this crop can be that good, and we'll see. Like I said, we got a big crop tour coming up next week. We'll see what they find, but they've set this bar so high at this point in time. Like I said, it'd be very strange for them to really claw back dramatically. I mean, we have clients here in Illinois though. Shaun, I was talking today. He said, I think I've lost about 10 bushels in the last 2 weeks since I've talked to you. He said, going into the beginning of August, he said, we were getting the rain. Everything looked good. He said, he goes, look, I'm not stressed. I'm around 240 corn. He said, this is not a disaster. But he said, look, if we keep dry, we keep missing these rains. He said, I could lose another 10 bushels. He said, it's not a disaster, but this crop could still shave off depending on how the weather plays out, over the next 4 to 6 weeks. So this is not in the bin per se. But like I said, the problem is when you're looking at it right now as an end user, with a total supply projected at 18 billion bushels, you've got to feel pretty comfortable that, you're going to have your choice of price where to buy this corn.
Yeah, it definitely complicates the risk management, the marketing, and the hedging in the short term. Indeed. Jim, I really appreciate you joining us here today. I know that today is just bonkers, so I do appreciate it. Encourage all of our audience to check out agmarket.net. Jim and his team, whether it's Matt, Jim, Brian, they got a great list and a roster of people that do a great job on the analyst side. Jim, thanks a lot for joining us.
Thanks for having me. Appreciate it.
We'll be right back on RealAg Radio, brought to you today by Nutrien eKonomics.
Everyone has questions about their farm. From general inquiries to in-depth fertilizer questions, it can be hard to find straightforward answers, let alone ones that apply to your operation. That's exactly why eKonomics was created. Our team sifts through the endless stream of agronomic information so you don't have to, providing relevant answers, one-of-a-kind tools, and easy-to-implement advice all in one place. Find your answers at nutrien-economics.com.
The Canola School on RealAgriculture.com is a video series that showcases the latest in canola research and production agronomy. Learn from some of the best at your own pace through quick and timely producer-focused videos available on our YouTube channel. The Canola School on RealAgriculture.com is the quickest way to keep up to date on all the latest in canola production. Boost your canola IQ with the Canola School, brought to you by BASF, and visit canolaschool.com.
The Pulse School on RealAgriculture.com has everything you need to get your crop off to a great start and a strong finish. Whether you're growing chickpeas, faba beans, lentils, or peas, you'll get all the latest and best agronomic information at PulseSchool.com. A library of top-notch agronomy videos from industry experts available on demand at your fingertips. Visit the Pulse School, brought to you by BASF on RealAgriculture.com.
And welcome back to RealAg Radio. It's now time for a product spotlight with Nutrien, and we're talking eKonomics today. We are joined by Lyle Cowell. He is a senior agronomist with Nutrien Wholesale for Canada, based out of Tisdale, Saskatchewan. How are we doing today, Lyle?
I'm doing great, thank you.
Okay, we're going to talk about, obviously, fertilizer in this eKonomics edition of this podcast. And I guess let's talk about the cost or logistical advantages to doing fertilizer application in the fall. Why should I do that, Lyle?
Well, the question usually relates to nitrogen application in the fall. And there's a lot of reasons that some farmers choose to do so. For some farms, spring application works just fine, but there are reasons that fall application has some advantages on some farms. Some farms look for that extra time in the spring. Applying fertilizer, nitrogen fertilizer in the fall frees up some time, be it in transportation of that fertilizer, loading fertilizer, application of that fertilizer. It frees up some time in the spring. Usually, nitrogen fertilizer is less expensive in fall, so there's usually a cost-saving component to it, as well as a cost of storage component. When you apply it in the fall, it's stored in the soil. You don't have to worry about storage over the wintertime period, the cost of the storage, the risk of storage. It's in the soil. It's ready to go in spring. There's other reasons. Less spring compaction. Usually, very often, soils are a little muddy in spring. You're pulling that extra weight over the field, be it a air cart or an ammonia wagon, a liquid wagon. That's extra compaction on wet soil in spring. And it also frees up some space. You've got an air tank rather than having it full of nitrogen fertilizer. You might be able to put something else in that tank. So it give you a little bit of more flexibility in the spring. And so there's a lot of good reasons. And it extends beyond that, even beyond fertilizer management. Less disturbance in spring usually means a little bit water saved in the springtime. That seedbed water is saved, as well as it will stimulate a little bit less weed growth in the spring. So there's a lot of reasons, a lot of advantages to doing it in the fall. Again, it depends on the farm and how you want to manage it.
How does the weather patterns in the fall, how does that impact your decision-making, what you should do?
Well, the rule of thumb that has been locked into Western Canadian agriculture for decades now is to wait for the soil to be cool. So rule of thumb, we like to wait for the soil to be 10 degrees or less. It's just to reduce the risk of nitrogen that you apply, for example, as ammonia or urea, reduce the risk of it converting to nitrate in the fall so that then reduces the risk of it being lost in the spring. The risk in spring is if you have water laying on the soil. Nitrates can leach, nitrates can denitrify, so we delay that application for cooler weather in the fall just for that reason. That's the primary weather question when it comes to fall application.
Now, when it comes to forms of nitrogen, there are some options. Which of those options is the best fit for fall fertilization?
Generally, the ammonium type forms, and that includes urea. So anhydrous ammonia, urea, arguably even secondary nitrogen products like ammonium sulfate can be applied quite safely in the fall. So really it's a little bit product independent. Most nitrogen fertilizers can be applied in fall. There's increased risk if you wanted to use UAN, urea ammonium nitrate solution fertilizer, because of course a portion of it is already in a nitrate form. And that's our objective, is to not have too much of the nitrogen in a nitrate form. So we tend to lean away from putting on UAN in the fall.
When it comes to trying to, our attempt or our strategy to mitigate leaching or denitrification, some of those risks, how can we minimize those impacts when it comes to fall applied nitrogen?
Well, the primary way to reduce losses, there's two steps to take. One, put the nitrogen under the ground. A band in the fall is the best. Just the facts of it. There's been decades of research to show that a fall band is better than a fall broadcast application. A fall band is better than a spring broadcast application. So putting it in a nice tight band under the soil, at a depth of at least 3 inches down, will reduce the risk of ammonia losses, denitrification losses, and actually reduces the risk of immobilization, that tying up of nitrogen as residue decays. You're separating that nitrogen away from the residue, so there's less immobilization. So placement is the number one thing a farmer can do. The number two thing is delay application to when the soil is cooled down. Again, we're looking for that rule of thumb of about 10 degrees Celsius. And I should note, sometimes we delay that too much. And when it comes to weather, one of the biggest mistakes we can make is to delay application so late that you're starting to try apply nitrogen fertilizer in frozen soil. That's worse than trying to apply it a little bit too early. So, you have to think about, fit in what you plan to do in the time frame that you have in the fall.
Great stuff. Lyle, if somebody wants more information in regards to fall fertility, where would be a great place to get it?
Well, I hope that you would look at the eKonomics platform. You mentioned it at the start, eKonomics with a K. The website is fantastic. It's hosted by Nutrien, and it's a unique website in the industry in that it is entirely focused on agronomy. It's not about products. It's all about just good fertilizer management.
Again, that website to find out more is nutrien-economics.com, and that's economics with a K. We'll be right back on RealAg Radio, Rural Radio 147 Sirius XM, right after this quick break.
At Proven Seed, we know that farming in Western Canada doesn't just teach us, it shapes us. Here we face challenges with resilience, innovation, and grit born from decades of experience. We battle the conditions again and again because growing crops here isn't just what we do, it's who we are. We're raised to adapt just like you, with varieties grown specifically for your local conditions. Visit provenseed.ca/raised to adapt to hear our story.
I get to spend every day talking to farmers in the ag industry through RealAgriculture.com and RealAg Radio. But nothing is more fun than speaking to an audience live and in person. If you're planning an ag event, book a Real Agriculture speaker to make it a successful and memorable experience. Email shaney@realagriculture.com and you can book myself or any other Real Ag personality to speak at your event. Bring your audience all the fun, insight, and energy of Real Agriculture. I'm telling you, what a day today. What a day. Unbelievable. I don't know where. Whew, what a Tuesday. I've used stronger language than that earlier today. But you look at the WASDE, that 188 on corn, the corn acre number, the pullback in soybean acres. Great an analysis earlier by Jim McCormick of agmarket.net. Today's show is brought to you by Nutrien eKonomics. Make sure you go to nutrien-economics with a K.com. Some great agronomic information on that site. Big thanks to Nutrien for being today's show sponsor. Tomorrow on the show, we're going to have Chris Davidson from the Canola Council of Canada to talk about these Chinese tariffs on canola. The new tariffs that were announced this morning, 75% temporary tariff on canola seed this time. You look at it, essentially China's saying to North America, we don't want canola out of Canada and we don't want soybeans out of the U.S. We're going to procure exclusively out of South America until further notice. So oilseeds really facing some demand, or reshuffling of the trade lanes. Maybe that's the best way to put it. Let's talk about the Canadian Farmer Sentiment Index results. We'll do that kind of quickly. We'll probably spend a little bit more time breaking it a little bit more down tomorrow, as news has been crazy here today. So we asked farmers about so what we do is quarterly. We look at how far we go to our Real Agri Studies Insights panel and we ask them about a number of different issues. And we're going to focus on current farm financial performance and future farm financial performance here today. When we look at current farm financial performance, this is how is my farm, how is it performing today financially compared to 12 months ago? 0 to 200 is the scale, 100 is neutral. Last month, or in April, I guess, last time we did the survey, was at 64. So pretty negative. It's gone down 2 points to 62. Okay. So we're definitely in a worse financial position today than we were 12 months ago. Now, here's what's important. We asked farmers, where's the benchmark? Like, how would you describe your current farm financial situation? 57% of farmers indicate their farm's financial situation is good or excellent. Okay. But hey, that's only 57%, and we're declining. Now, when we look at future farm financial performance, this is how is my farm going to financially perform 12 months from now compared to today? So not only are we concerned about our farm's financial performance today versus 12 months ago, we're also concerned going forward. It was a 72 in the July survey. That's down as well, 2 points from 74 back in April. So we're clearly seeing a pullback in how farmers are feeling about their income statements relative to 12 months ago, and they're concerned going forward. Well, and today's WASDE report is probably not going to help that. What's interesting is that back in July, the outlook on selling crops, farmers were partly bullish, I'll put it that way. When it comes to the direction of the markets, we were at a 105 at a 200. It's actually the only positive number across all the different questions in our Canadian Farmer Sentiment Index. So farmers were feeling strong, or not strong, but positive about the direction of the markets. But there remains to be these concerns about input costs, right? Fertilizer, for example. We heard earlier talking to Jim McCormick from agmarket.net, that 2026 crop decision really looks like people will be switching to soybeans, and that's a whole nother bunch of consequences that are very much tied to that. When we look at confidence in making farm investment decisions, this is capital purchases, we're at a 55 out of 200. So now it does not seem to be a good time for those capital purchases. I'm sure there's a lot of U.S. producers looking at trying to maybe put up some quick storage to store some of this corn crop. But of course, this is Canadian data that we're talking about. And what we'll do in the future weeks here, what we're doing is we're starting a Real Agri Studies podcast where Justin and I on a weekly basis, we're gonna drip out some of this data that we're finding. We're going to do things like compare the Canadian Farmer Sentiment Index to the Purdue Ag Barometer. So we ask a lot of the similar questions. We're going to dig into some of the demographics. How do young farmers versus older farmers feel? Large versus small farms, east versus west, and a whole bunch of things like that. So you can find out more by going to realagristudies.com. Okay, we got to move. We got to keep going here, because coming up next, we're going to talk to Lyle Larkin. He's the Executive Director with the Grain Growers of Canada. Today's show is brought to you by Nutrien eKonomics. We'll be right back right after this. Built on over 100 years of seed innovation and unwavering commitment to farmers, Pioneer 100 Series canola hybrids deliver a step change in yield performance and agronomic traits. This isn't just better canola. It's different canola. Pioneer 100 Series. Contact your local Pioneer sales representative or visit pioneer.com/100 series to learn more today.
It's summertime, and you've got a lot of important decisions to make when it comes to your corn crop. Let the Corn School on RealAgriculture.com help guide you through those big decisions with input from leading experts in the field. If it's spray timing, disease identification, or any other field issue, the Corn School's got you covered. The Corn School on RealAgriculture.com. Brought to you by BASF and Pride Seeds.
Lots of fun during the commercial break around here at Real Ag Radio. Today's show is brought to you by Nutrien eKonomics. And of course, you can find out more by going to nutrien-economics.com. And of course, that's eKonomics with a K. Joining us right now is the Executive Director of the Grain Growers of Canada. He's out on a field tour. It is Lyle Larkin. How are we doing today, Kyle?
I'm good. Thanks for having me, Shaun.
Yeah, it's great to chat with you. Okay, what are you doing this week? What are you up to?
Yeah, so we're on our second annual GGC summer tour. So last year we did the same exact thing where I'm driving this year actually from Winnipeg to Edmonton, stopping at a bunch of grain farms in between and hosting local members of parliament. So it's a great opportunity for myself, Grain Growers of Canada. We're obviously based in Ottawa. It's a good opportunity for us to see what's going on at the ground level, connect with the grassroots, hear from farmers as to the challenges and opportunities that they're facing, and bring that back to Ottawa. And then on the other side, it's also a good opportunity to have local members of parliament out at farms in their riding, so they can hear as well from farmers about the challenges and opportunities that they're facing.
What are some of the main issues that you are making sure get addressed in these discussions?
Yeah, so we're highlighting three key issues this week. One, which is front of mind for folks, especially this morning, is international trade. So farmers are still being severely impacted by the uncertainty from our neighbor to the south, our first largest trading partner, the United States. But our second largest trading partner, China, where we export over $8 billion worth of grain products and grain every year, just slapped 75% tariffs on canola seed this morning. That follows their 100% tariffs on canola meal, canola oil, and peas. So it's a difficult time for farmers today. We'll see what happens on canola pricing, but that's why we're highlighting international trade, how important it is for the government to reset relationships, not only in the United States, not only in China, but other places as well. You can think of India as another example. The second issue we're highlighting is railway transportation. Over 90% of the grain grown in the prairies is transported by rail. So we're highlighting the benefits of extended interswitching. The pilot obviously expired in March 2025. The government has committed to bringing it back in their platform. So we're looking for that in the fall. So we're pushing that and letting MPs know that we'll be talking about that going into the fall. And then the third issue is really around public plant breeding. We've seen a decrease in spending and funding for public plant breeding. This is something that's uber important for farmers. So we're highlighting to members of parliament the crops that are successful nowadays because of the research and development that has been done over the past few decades, either on drought resistance, pest resistance, increasing yields. There's a great success story there, but we can't take our foot off the pedal. And so we're really highlighting the need for the government to double down on their funding for plant breeding.
Okay, so lots to digest there. Let's stick with plant breeding. So as Grain Growers of Canada, are you arguing that the federal government needs to stay in public plant breeding and even increase that budget even more so? Well, because they've been reducing it. They've been cutting back.
Yeah, we're absolutely in there. And we kind of have two folds to it. So the first fold is on the public side of things. The government has decreased their funding on public plant breeding, but they've also decreased funding on other things, be it research infrastructure. Our research infrastructure, especially across the prairies, is aging and it's falling apart. We're also highlighting the need for hiring. There's a huge HR backlog at agriculture and agri-food, especially on the scientist piece of things. So when you have a backlog on the folks that are actually supposed to be doing the research and development, that's a big issue. And look, when you just look at cereals, so look at wheat and barley, for every dollar invested in public plant breeding, they're making $32 back in economic activity. So there's also a great story about economic growth there that we know the government is looking in. So we're telling them, look, there's definitely austerity that's coming forward in Ottawa. You see that from the Prime Minister, from what he said and the direction he's given to his cabinet. But we're really highlighting the benefits to the economy of public plant breeding. So that's one side. And the other side, obviously, is private plant breeding, which is especially important for certain crops. There is a role for government to play. We have to make Canada more attractive for private investments. There are other places in the world where you can make a return on your investment a lot faster. The United States is one of those places. So we need to get our regulatory frameworks at CFIA, at PMRA, in check. So when private companies invest in Canada, they can have a return on their investment faster, sooner rather than later. And at the end of the day, that's going to benefit farmers with the latest and greatest crop varieties.
Kyle, on the trade front, and you mentioned the issues with China and canola here today, but in general, what is the Canadian government supposed to do? Like we hear a lot about resetting relationships and diversifying trade, and that all sounds great. What does that actually look like?
Look, I'll be honest. The government of Canada is stuck between a rock and a hard place, and the rock is the United States, and the hard place is China. So we're in between these two major trading partners, these geopolitical forces. But at the end of the day, our first largest trading partner by far is the United States. They're in and around $17 billion of exports every year of grain and grain products. China's at $8 billion, and they're in second place. So there's a huge gap there. So we have to get the U.S. situation under control. We have to get some kind of agreement there so the uncertainty goes away. But we also have to remind our American counterparts that the reason that Canada took tariffs or placed tariffs, 100% tariffs on Chinese electric vehicles and steel and aluminum was at the behest and at the request of the U.S. government. And when I was in Washington, D.C. in April, we reminded a lot of members of Congress and senators about that, and they were blown away. Some of them had no idea that even existed. So there's a role there of awareness to show that we're in lockstep with the U.S., but if we're going to be in lockstep, they need to be in lockstep with us. And then on the China piece, we need the government to have some engagement there. I'm very looking forward to the Prime Minister getting out to China as soon as possible, engaging with that government so we can have a better understanding as to what they're looking for, and so we can get away from this tariff situation, because it really is impacting farmers at the end of the day. And I always like to remind the government and members of Parliament that the folks employed through the agri-food sector in Canada are more than those employed in the automobile sector and the aviation sector combined. So there's a lot of attention on autos. There's a lot of attention on other sectors in Canada being impacted by tariffs. Our really ask to the government is, look, you have a major agri-food sector. We can make more money. We can really grow the economy more, but we have to pay it some kind of attention. And we're not there yet.
Well, the difference is in agriculture, those people aren't unionized
right.
For the most part. They are in the auto sector and they are in the steel aluminum sector, and that might be the difference.
Well, I think a difference too, Shaun, is their geographical placement. Every party's looking to win ridings in Oakville or Mississauga, et cetera. Other ridings that have been, of one party for decades. It's a bit more challenging on the political side.
Yeah, and from an engagement standpoint, what do you say to the fact that Minister MacDonald has, they've been to Indonesia but have not been to China? And as far as I know, last time I chatted with him, going back about 2 weeks ago, still there had not been direct contact between himself and Secretary Rollins in the U.S. That doesn't sound like a lot of engagement. What's your thoughts to that?
Yeah, I think the silver lining to that is there has been engagement, obviously, at the highest levels between Canada and the U.S. You've obviously seen the Prime Minister and the President engage there. Yeah. I think there's also some benefit to the Minister of International Trade engaging at the international level. So Minister Sidhu has contacted and been in contact with his Chinese counterparts, and they're looking to set something up for the fall. So I think there's some hope moving forward. I don't want to be doom and gloom here. But look, at the end of the day, we have 75% tariffs on canola seed, which is the majority of our exports to China. We have 100% tariffs on other commodities that likely will deflate pricing for farmers that are about to harvest their canola. I think it's no surprise that these tariffs come at this specific point. I think that's specifically targeted towards Canadian farmers. So we're in a challenging spot, and we have to get over this hump as soon as possible.
Okay, the MPs are there to listen to yourself and the farms that you're visiting. What are you hearing from farmers? What are they saying?
Yeah, I mean, what I've seen so far, and I've just finished my Manitoba leg. I'm about to drive into Saskatchewan after this interview. But what I've heard so far, and before this tour as well, is we have a very interesting weather patterns across the prairies this year, and they're kind of micro regions. You have some areas that are doing really well. They've had the optimal amount of rain. The growing season's been great. They're going to do okay. And then you have the total flip opposite in other micro regions across the prairies that they've had a good amount of rain here and there, but challenging of late, and so their yields and their harvest likely isn't going to be as good. So what we're hearing from farmers really is around margins, and margins being squeezed. The cost of fertilizer, the cost of seed, pesticides, that's not going down. And the price that they're getting for their various commodities is going down. So they're getting squeezed on both ends. And our message to the government and members of Parliament is, they have tools, they have ways to make life a little easier for farmers. So, I was just at a farm yesterday where the farmer let me know he's been paying around $40,000 to $50,000 a year in carbon taxes for the past 7-ish years. He's really looking forward to this fall to paying $0. And that 50,000 for him is likely going towards that margin. It's not likely going towards investments. It's looking to stay afloat. But that's one small area that the government has been able to help farmers. Obviously they've had to pay X amount over the past 7 years, but finally we've gotten to a spot where the carbon tax isn't going to impact grain farmers. And we're actually looking to get that legislatively, removed in the fall. There's Bill C4 that's still floating around. And so we need that to pass as soon as possible.
Now, Kyle, there's a strong conservative representation in Ottawa.
Yeah.
Are you able to drag some Liberal MPs in the government to some of these farms, or is it mainly conservatives then?
It's mainly conservatives. We did try to have a few Liberal MPs from some suburban, urban ridings out to farms. Unfortunately, they weren't available. Obviously, the summer is up and down for MPs. Some are, some are doing many events. Others are taking some well-deserved vacation. But yeah, mostly this week it's conservative MPs. But I think the benefit for us is that some of them are brand new to Parliament Hill. The member of Parliament that we had out yesterday at a farm, he was just elected a few months ago, has never held elected office. So for him, he's drinking from a fire hose. And for him, it was a huge benefit to be able to visit a grain farm because part of his riding, some of it is suburban Winnipeg, but the other part is rural Manitoba. So he's got farms in his riding, and he was really looking forward to the farm tour and just learning and seeing what's going on a modern grain farm, seeing the size of grain bins nowadays, the size of equipment, the amount that farmers spend on equipment. I mean, we had a good chat yesterday about how much farmers spend on tractors or combines or seeders, and he was blown away. So, some of that just raising awareness with MPs, I think, is the big benefit of this week.
Will we see Kyle Larkin on a combine during this trip this week?
That's the hope. I mean, if it keeps raining, the combines aren't going out. So yesterday I was supposed to be on a combine. It was absolutely pouring rain. I'm hoping to get out on a combine. I don't trust my skills about driving it. They'll probably throw me in the passenger seat, but that's okay.
Hey, one final question. I want to just circle back to this China tariff situation that was announced this morning by China. Do you think the Canadian government should retaliate, or what do you think they should do? What are you encouraging the government to do?
Look, we need to, we have to take baby steps here. This is brand new breaking news from this morning. So I know the Canola Council of Canada and the Canola Growers Association are going to be responding soon, and they'll really be leading the charge there. And we're happy to support them on what they're going to be saying. But what we're going to say is the government just needs to engage. I don't think retaliatory tariffs is the way to go. Look, at the end of the day, the facts are the Canadian government were the ones that took tariffs on China, tariffs that were not WTO compliant. And the funny story about this whole episode is that China is actually the one that's been more WTO compliant in this trade war than Canada has. So I think we just have to look towards engagement and conversation. And the Prime Minister needs to get on the horn with China, with the Chinese Premier, and try to find a solution moving forward here, because more tariffs on the grain sector doesn't help farmers, and it doesn't help Canadians.
Yeah, great stuff. Hey, Kyle, enjoy the trip across the prairies. I'm sure you will stop at some great hole-in-the-wall restaurants in small town Alberta, Saskatchewan, and as you leave Manitoba. So congratulations on the trip, and look forward to hearing more about it. Thanks for joining us here today.
Thanks, Shaun. I appreciate it.
That was Kyle Larkin, Executive Director with the Grain Growers of Canada, out about traveling across the prairies. That sounds like a really fun trip. One year we should do that with the RealAg Radio. Just kind of get in our car and just probably have to have a plan. I was going to say randomly drive across the prairies, but that seems like me, but I think we would have to know where we were going. But it'd be a lot of fun at this time of the year, and look forward to seeing some of Kyle's pictures and some of the stories from that trip. Okay, a lot of fun today, a lot of great conversation. What a news day today. Whew. Packed. Make sure you go to realagriculture.com to stay on top of what EPA announced today. We got the AEM numbers on machinery sales in Canada and the U.S. We've also, of course, as we just chatted about, the canola tariffs with China. Lots to break down, lots to discuss. So check out realagriculture.com. Big thanks to Nutrien eKonomics for being the sponsor of today's program. And of course, that website again is nutrien-economics.com. And make sure you check out the new season. I think it starts next week. Mike Howell is the host of the Dirt podcast, so make sure you check that out as well. Now, if you have any feedback, you can send me an email, shaney@realagriculture.com, or call the Real Ag feedback line, 855-776-6147. Thanks, everybody, for getting real and getting connected with Real Ag Radio. We'll, of course, chat again tomorrow. Cheers, everybody.